Welcome, everybody, to 52 Living Ideas. Today, we are here to celebrate the life of Mikey, okay, the magical Mikey. You know, um, we did, like I think about 3,000 meetups, which is, I'm just speaking for myself. Everybody will speak for, for themselves here to share. We did about 3,000 meetups during COVID, and Mikey was there for a good 600, 700 of those at various topics. We covered many, many, many different topics. And he always had things to say about every topic. And he always connected any topic that we were discussing with many, many, many other topics. Now, we had many people on the screen. You know, we have about, you know, 16 people right now. We used to have about 50 people, and they were all there. So it was very hard because Mikey wanted to speak or wanted to show all the connections between everything that he could see. And finally, I came up with one idea of time limit of about 2 minutes. And what I found was with the time limit, the profundity of his insights went through the roof because because he knew that he had 2 minutes. Everything that he wanted to say, he managed to put it in 2 minutes, and he would end all his talk with the same line. And I'm inviting you to share whatever you want to share and end with that line in his honor, that I yield back the balance of my time. All right. So I'm inviting you to talk about Mikey for between 2 to 4 minutes because we want everybody to be able to share. You know, there is family here, there are friends here, there are people who never saw him. Like I never personally saw him. Uh, you know, and what we're going to do is we're going to start with Ellen, okay, and then we will go to Joe, and then I'm going to invite everybody to share. Keep it between 2 to 4 minutes, and please end with Mikey's favorite line, and we'll go from there. All right. So, Ellen, the floor is yours.
Oh, so my sister is trying to get in.
Oh, what's her name? Elston?
Jenny and Elston, yeah,
Okay, Elston. Wonderful.
and Jenny.
Is it okay? Ruby, Nelly, I
Yeah,
see. That's the
that's
one?
Ruby is another granddaughter.
Very good.
Oh, wow.
This is wonderful. This is
Yeah.
wonderful.
And is there Jenny?
I don't see Jenny
Oh,
here.
maybe she was just saying her kids were doing. Okay. She might be with one of them.
Welcome, Elston. Welcome, Ruby. Sorry about the delay in letting you in. Sorry about that. Ellen, go ahead.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for setting all this up, and thank you for everybody who's here. I'm very touched. I'm very moved. I wrote something, well, maybe 2 pages long that I'm not going to read because I'd have to yield the balance of my time after 1/4 of it. But what I intend to do is to somehow circulate it. You suggested, Shrikant, that we contribute, if we like, to legacy.com. There's already a site up there for Mikey Milt in his honor. It's already there, and you can certainly add your comments to that or simply share them with me, and I can send them around if we don't want to go, publish it into some vast unknown space. Well, I'll just say a couple of things, all right? I could go on for hours. I guess I'm speaking primarily as someone was Mikey's significant other for more than a decade and who loved him and continues to love him very much. I would say warts and all. He was something of a devil. It was always fun. It was always challenging. And he did have comments to say about everything. And, and he never yielded the balance of his time in my presence, except, on one of these meetups. But having said that, a couple of just general comments he made. You know what I'd make? Mikey loved philosophy, loved theology, loved spirituality, and loved, of course, to find the common denominator among all of those three things. He was particularly fond of Plato and Aristotle, and more recently, Maimonides. And he taught me and helped me understand the interface among all of those philosophers. And I'm not going to lecture on that now, but I guess the most important thing to say is that they all thought that the best way to find a higher truth is through contemplation and through philosophical discussion and through analysis and through critical inquiry. And if any, you all know that if anyone was a critical inquirer, it was Mikey. Okay, and so I guess that's the most important thing to say about his approach to everything. And so this medium was absolutely his modus operandi, because he could indulge in critical inquiry and engage everyone in the same. And it was inspiring, and it was infectious, and it was unstoppable. So, even, it's time to stop, time to eat. No, 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 no. And so he'd have these conversations in both ears while doing whatever it was. So he really loved it very, very much. So now, another thing I want to say about him is that his eclecticism. Not only did he connect everything, but he kind of believed in so many different things. I knew him because my background is quite Jewish, culturally Jewish. I knew him as the Jewish boy who grew up in Chicago and was educated in part by a rabbi and was very, very literate in matters Talmudic. And he and I spent a considerable amount of time over the last few years reading together the philosopher Maimonides. And every time I had an idea about it, he would correct it. And he was usually pretty much right. And I kept learning because we kept growing together. And I've reached the point now where I'm planning to do some writing and some lecturing about Maimonides in the context of a lot of his contemporaries. I don't know about you all, but when I was going to school, we didn't study Maimonides. We didn't even study the Arab philosophers with whom Maimonides was in contact. We only studied Western philosophers. It was okay to go from Aristotle to Aquinas, but you didn't do Maimonides, let alone Ibn Rashid. They were not part of the scene. And so I'm trying to pull it all together and working on that. And the reason I'm doing it is largely because I had these conversations with Mikey, who inspired me to do it and who criticized so much of what I was trying to think through. So he's, how to say this, he's always with me. He's always going to be with me. He's in the back of my head, advising me on everything, correcting me on a lot of things. And that's just the way he is. Now, I guess the only other thing I want to say before yielding the balance of my time is that I really believe he's still with us. I don't know what he's done to my mind, but he's helped me to see the higher truth. And he's helped me to recognize that there is this permanent connectivity. I'm a doubter, I'm a skeptic, but somehow in this sudden tragic thing that's happened to him, I'm able to find a higher connection. And so I have to thank him for that. Okay, now I can't wait to hear what everybody else has to say. So thank you for this opportunity to speak first, and I yield the balance of my time.
Thank you, Ellen. Would love to hear from many people. So if you would like to speak, I don't want to put anybody in the spot. You can take your time. If you want to speak, you're welcome to speak. If you don't want to speak, that's fine too. If you just want to listen, that's fine too. So if you would like to speak, you can just type an exclamation mark in chat or raise your hand in Zoom, and I will note that, and we will just, even if somebody else is speaking, you can just raise your hand, and I will just put you in the line. So we're going to start. Next is going to be Joe, followed by Evelyn. Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say that these communities are built on people like Mike. I mean, essentially somebody that's here all the time and actually has a genuine love for learning but he also has an incredible amount of respect that he shows to all the other participants. So that kind of creates this environment where people actually want to come back. So then you have this NASA scientist coming, to these meetups, who's then demonstrating, a level of respect to everyone. And that really speaks to his character. And, to what Ellen was just saying a moment ago, the idea of studying Maimonides or all these different traditions, that we study them because it's not about acquiring knowledge, it's about wisdom. And wisdom is part of that respect that he really gave towards everyone. The other thing I want to say is that, you said he was here for 500 meetups. And I mean, that doesn't even count the Orlando Stoics, and I know he came to the Greater Philadelphia Thinking Society, and he came to so many others. And, when you think about that, we were a priority in his life. I mean, think about the priorities in your life. And we're one of them for him. He made time for us. And that is as much a compliment that, there's no greater compliment. So it's, you build in, you kind of get used to hearing certain people, and it's really hard to come to the realization that you're not going to hear that voice again. But also the idea, the esoteric part of Mikey, was, I mean, that was critical as far as understanding him, because it really helped us learn. Now, sometimes we didn't necessarily see where it was going or where these connections were going to be made. And I went back and listened to a couple of the YouTubes, in order just to kind of remind myself some of the things he says. And what he said is, everything is worth following up on. I mean, it was deeply profound. So in the sense that he left us with a gift. Ellen said that, he's still with us. He really is, in that sense. He's still, in a way, his contributions are still giving back to the community. Again, he would link physics, philosophy, psychology. The way he did it, like it was all these different thinkers as well. And the reason why that's so important is one of the things about this community and all these other communities is that we're not learning things in a silo. We're not learning things in isolation. And so being able to make those connections enables us to have a better understanding of, how to have a framework for learning, to make connections that we would never otherwise be able to make. So, I mean, I can go on and on. There was something that he mentioned just about topics that were far beyond, my comprehension. But even he was talking about one time as, I won't go into the details of it, but truth as a tensor instead of it being a scalar, like it's going to become. And I did some research on that, and it really, I uncovered a lot of uses, like what he meant by that, like a lot of uses for the information itself and how it works with language. And so, I mean, in a way, he changed our lives. And I mean, and you can't ask for any more from anybody. So I'll leave it, and I yield the bit.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Joe. Evelyn, you're next. And folks would love to hear from you. Go ahead and type an exclamation mark or raise your hand in Zoom.
I was fascinated from the first day that I met Mikey, because we have a very extensive, rather international family. And all of a sudden, Mikey started speaking, and I just thought, oh, he's Cousin Alfred. And because here's a person that's making, in a very calm, matter-of-fact ways, statements that you might totally disagree with or have a whole different opinion on. and yet the mind and the words and the grasp of the situation is unique. And in our family, a large, we cover Catholics and Jews and Buddhists and a few non-believers of anything. So we have a fairly eclectic group, but they definitely, when it comes to a certain leanings, let's say, most of the group leans somewhat in the same direction, except for Alfred. And Alfred was a founder of two large law schools in New York and Virginia who were stressing military law. And if anyone knows anything about military law, in military law, you are guilty until innocent as opposed to non-military law. And so that was always putting Alfred in the position in the family of making these perfectly normal, clear family statements. Sometimes we'd be sitting Shiva for somebody, and, and there he was, making statements which the majority of people had very different opinions, but yet the respect was there. And Mikey was even better in that direction because his experience had been much larger and his background in so many ways. And so he had this unique gift of you immediately stopped thinking of what you were usually thinking in terms of, and you started to look at his point of view and to see how he had arrived and his vocabulary and the articulate way he could express was unique and fascinating. And if you really enjoy critical thinking and being able to have a conversation with somebody that you're not worrying all of the time whether there's going to be either disagreement or lack of knowledge, there was a joy right there. And his intrigue with Maimonides was interesting to me because when I worked in Washington and I would walk home, there's a little tiny circle that I know it's in the Northwest section, and it isn't that far from many of the more prominent areas in DC. But there's it's a little circle which has a few plants and a little nice cement bench that you could sit on, a very tiny little, and right behind the bench was a dedicated scroll that had Maimonides. And sometimes I became so intrigued with this that I sought out books, and I would sometimes sit on that bench and read of Maimonides behind. And again, it was something I would not have pursued except for that. So, all in all, if you want your mind to be expanded and to have different viewpoints, at this point, I tend more to Buddhistic kind of thinking myself. So, when Ellen says he may still be with us, that's quite apparent in my thinking as well. So even though I would come away and think different things in terms of social skills and so forth, that Mikey could stand a little improvement in that direction. But when it came to talking to him, you never could walk away, So a unique individual, and we need some unique individuals, especially these days. So he will be missed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Evelyn. Thank you. Next up is Vanessa, and then anybody else who would like to share. Vanessa.
Um, yeah, well, thanks, Joe. I always wondered what he did because he comes across as so knowledgeable. And I never thought to ask because, he was humble about everything and that really wouldn't lead anything to discussion one way or the other. But it's funny, jokingly, a small part of me wondered he's maybe the human version of AI, simply because not knowing what he did, he would come up with so vast. You wonder if he did research beforehand, and to think he might pull something from religion, philosophy, history, science. And even if you were to do the research, to go through your notes and come up with that quickly, make the connections. But he would say he would disagree, but do so like calmly and quietly and gently. And sometimes you would be more convinced by that. Not that I got to prove you're right or to prove that I'm right. He may, I think that's wrong, but these are the reasons and such, and almost overwhelm your mind trying to mull it all over. But it wasn't it wasn't so much, oh, I want to win the point. I want to win the argument. And he actually led me to do one. I was debating about one in the Greater Philadelphia Thinking Society. I think we were doing something, and he happened to mention, oh, time's just an illusion. And that led me to do something. And someone else said the other thing, oh, it's all made up. And I'm thinking, depending on how you look at it, well, the way we determined on Earth is such and such. We set it to the sun and everything. I believe it's quoting, I'm probably getting it wrong. What Buddha, I think, said that, or Gandhi. I'm probably had that wrong, but I think some philosopher originally said that quote that he was saying. So you didn't know where, you was almost anticipation. Okay, what is he going to draw from the just illustrate or further detail his response, and sometimes leaving with more questions, just to say, to broaden the thing and realize, well, maybe you should look into this, or realize, what maybe why I came up with this. Not so much, okay, because you didn't know that, you got to go look here, and it left you wondering, wanting more. Just like you either read a book, if you left with more questions than answers. And even thinking, well, where did he come up with that? And sometimes I would do a little research. Okay, I see where he's coming from. And I'm kind of like, I don't want to say the opposite, but when we used to meet up in person, a different group, I would say, okay, I'm gonna stop talking now and bank my time for later. And I was half joking, half serious. I said, wait, we can do that. We can do that. I'm just like, okay, either losing my train of thought, or someone may say something later that I want to draw upon, and maybe make my answer or my response that much more meaningful. It's like I said, he was very soft spoken. I never knew what he did up till Joe mentioned that. Like I said, his knowledge base was immense. I'm definitely going to miss him. And thank you for all his family that's here. He will definitely be missed. And I will yield back the balance of my time because my mind's getting overwhelmed. And just, I'm sure others have a lot to speak, but he will definitely be missed, but not forgotten. And like I said, he's still in here. He'll be in the back of the mind. Just right now thinking, okay, I could have said it better or such. So on to the next.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you. Steve.
Yeah, thank you. I first met Mike around 2006. We were both members of a philosophical discussion group called Plato's Cave that met in a little coffee shop in Winter Park, just away from downtown. Rami also was a member of that group, I think. And I think, Ellen, you were in there somewhere too.
Yes, yeah.
Correct. So, and I guess the first thing when I met Mike, I thought, who is this guy coming off the street, in such humble clothing? Of course, this was a little college shop, mainly college students. So, nothing fancy, but they would, dress typically in college fashion. But Mikey seemed not to care too much. He was very humble. However, the surprise, I think, came when he opened his mouth. We all found out that, first of all, that he was very bright, very intelligent, and he would study any subject of his own personal interest or any subject of the group's interest and explore it completely. Now, we didn't always agree with him. He didn't always agree with us, which didn't really matter because that's what philosophers do. We discuss, we argue, we debate. But one thing about early Mike is that Mike was one of the first ones that had a cell phone. And he always was buried in that. In fact, sometimes people would say, is he paying any attention to what's going on here? Because he had the advantage. Not only did he have a tremendous memory, he also had this little device that gave him that he could look up things and get answers. And so that's one of the ways we remember him, of course. So he, again, there was no Meetup and there was no Zoom at that time. So we met in person. So we got to know him. Later on, though, with Meetup and we, eventually went on the internet. It was always puzzling to me that Mike never turned his video on. We never showed his camera. Now, I'm kind of curious to know about Joe and some of the other groups that he belonged to, whether he did, but he didn't really want to show off. And of course, as I said, he was a very humble dresser, but his thoughts were very clear. They came across very clear. But I think a lot of our group, particularly after it partially failed after one of our hosts actually also died, just about the same time Mike did, and people didn't really get to know him, I think, in our Plato's Caves Orlando Stoics group so much because he never turned his camera on. But they knew when he spoke. Mike also had such a variety. It was already mentioned that he was interested in religion. He was interested in spirituality. At times, he and Ellen, along with me, would show up at the University Club of Winter Park, where one of the members would bring in a video on ancient aliens. Mike was actually interested in the whole UFO alien phenomena as well. And he didn't say too much about it. He had questions, of course, but that, it just showed how broadly he was interested in so many things. Mike and I often disagreed, but I always respected his opinion because I knew that he was very smart. And as a debater, he probably would beat me for sure. So anyway, he was fun to be around. He was a real pleasure, and I will surely miss him. So now there's more to say, but there's so many out here. I yield the balance of my time.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Steve. Maritza, you're next.
Hello, all. I first met Magical Mike here with 5211 Ideas. And yeah, as mentioned, he never did put on his camera. So I've seen him in more than one meetup. He joined us in our Greater Philadelphia Thinking Society meetups, but also never on camera. So I don't actually know what he looks like. But we had so many meetings together. It's funny how it never really occurred to me that I didn't know what he looked like. I just never thought about it. Um, Here at 5211 Ideas and also with the Greater Philadelphia Thinking Society, many of us are striving or budding comprehensive thinkers. And Mike stood out as somebody who was naturally a comprehensive thinker. So it was always a pleasure to hear him speak because it was like, life goes, as it were. I first encountered him when we were going through some different works by Jordan Peterson. And I remember that we were talking about, one of the rules of order, and he brought up so many different references. Like, I mean, he brought up Joseph Campbell and, Hobbes and Rousseau, and he was talking about the Sumerians and Judeo-Christianity and the two versions of, the creation that were in the Bible and Shakespeare and even the Constitution. Like, he went through all of them. And then, like, he started up talking about, that Rousseau says that man needs a set of rules in order to function in civilization. And that's just kind of one example of how so many of his comments went, where he would take us deep down into many different, and sometimes you're like, I'm not sure where he's going. Has he lost his thought? But he's never lost his thought. He always brings it back and then like says something that ties it all together. And so it was always a just brilliant.
I think it looks like.
Studied.
Go ahead, Maritza. Go ahead. You said it looked like brilliant, and then we lost you for a
sorry.
minute. So if you could continue.
Apologies. It looks like it was like a brilliant example of the value of learning a wide variety of topics, because then you can draw on them. And he saw connections in everything. I don't think I ever heard him speak where he was not making connections and pulling in us. And he did that for us also here as he got more and more into many of our groups. He would remind us of things we had discussed last week or 2 months ago and bring it in for us. So it was really just a great experience to be able to interact with him. And I'm grateful for having had him in my life, and my are and sharing him with us and the balance of time.
Thank you. Thank you, Maritza. Next up is Ellen.
Oh, can you hear me? Just a quick interlude. I had something to say here. I didn't say before, I didn't speak about the issue of magical realism and why, he used that name and what it meant to him. And one just particular mention of it, I'm sure other people will have questions or comments about it, is that I don't know if anyone has seen the Marc Chagall's painting of the Fiddler on the Roof. There's a fiddler on the roof, but he's not really on the roof. He has one foot on the roof and the other foot in the air. And Mikey kind of always saw himself as some sort of a magical figure that was not quite, was out in space somewhere, not quite with 2 feet on the ground, but someplace celestial, someplace other. And I think that had to do with his sense of the magic of reality. And so, when you Googled him or when you emailed him, you always saw his address as Magical Realism, and that was why. Thank you for letting me intrude again. So I wanted to say that.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Ellen. So folks, if you have not spoken before, I'm going to give you, Joe, you have a quick comment?
If somebody else is in the waiting, I'll wait.
Sure. Okay. Let's give a chance. I just want to, I invite everybody who wants to share, Mike has yielded his time for us. And the best thing we can do is to speak about him, because I think
I think Alan wants to say something there.
Oh, what
Isabel. And
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
You
sorry,
may be
who?
muted, or the microphone's not working.
Who is trying to speak? Give me a second.
It's Isabel Garrett.
Isabel. Let me see.
And Alan Corbin.
Oh, okay.
That's my father-in-law who.
Okay. Let me see. What's happening here? I think we are not able to hear. Isabel, can you do one thing?
Alan is trying to speak, but I guess he can't be heard for some reason. So.
Alan, the best thing to do is to just leave the Zoom and come back. Many times that fixes the problem. You can just leave the meeting and come back. Many times that is the best way of fixing the problem. Okay.
I believe they came on through Facebook. So.
Okay. Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Okay. We'll continue. I just want to say a couple of things. Just about magical realism. Ellen mentioned magical realism, and then I looked it up. What it is that, and actually it matches who Mike was so well, because magical realism is that, you're focused on the real things, and just completely unexpectedly, magical things just show up. Magical things happen. And they're not kind of set aside as magical things, but they are dealt with as the most real things in life. So, and it's just beautiful. And that's the sense that that was there throughout. All right. So folks would love to hear from you, because what happens is that Mike was multifaceted, as we are seeing, and all of us saw only a particular slice of him, and then there are so many different slices, and I'm sure each of us has a different slice. So if you would like, please, we'd be delighted if you'd share, if you wish. All right. So next up is Joe. Joe, go ahead.
Now, something that I'll just mention, Mike had a few things that he was proud of. I mean, it was obviously his family was one of them, but his scientific background and his family's ability to actually, accomplish a great deal. And so there were some of these things, and you were talking about how he valued the right things and how that enabled him to, that magic happens, so to speak. But, you think about in the ways that he's an example, and valuing the right things was kind of always focused on learning. And that enabled him to participate in any conversation. And that's a skill that we all should cultivate, because in a way, as brilliant as he was, he could always meet people where they are. And so that's one of the things that, at the Thinking Society in particular, that I actually, had some interactions with him. And, I have to say, actually, in the beginning, it was so far above me until, in the beginning of our meetups, that, it took me a minute to have a dialogue with him. And I said, oh my gosh, I've been missing out on so much. But then on top of that, that was interesting is that I always thought it was, I'll say this, cool if I could actually impress some of him on some of the things that he was talking about. And I remember whether it be about scalability or in particular economics. So that's an example of how to be, because then you're actually engaging with people in a meaningful way and you're creating meaning. And that's the most important thing, is that what it means to participate is to create meaning. And these are the relationships, the authenticity of the relationships as well. I mean, that's where you knew what you were getting, something esoteric, but you knew you were going to learn something. So I can, it's really, can't stress enough how, grateful I am for those particular gifts that he had left us with. I'd also say that even sometimes he would even ground CJ.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Joe. I'm going to give a chance for people who have not spoken first. So let's go with, give me just a second. Evelyn, I'm going to let Rami go next, if that's okay. Oh, wait a minute.
How do I do that?
Irene, please go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Please.
Did you want to say something? Or
Oh, no.
we were going to try to patch Alan through. I mean, I
Okay,
guess while
that's
Oh,
perfect.
wow,
you want
great.
to try to
Wonderful.
Yeah, so Alan will go in through our cell phones since he's not able to.
Perfect.
Can you call Alan, or should I call? I'll call him. But I just wanted to say, while we're waiting for this, that, it's very meaningful to hear how he made an impression on all of you, and how you all appreciated his intellect and his, yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna try to have Alan.
Can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Okay, I got it on speaker. Yeah, thanks, Irene.
Oh, can you turn your volume down on your computer? And then I think it'll go better.
You want it down on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that better, everyone?
Yeah.
To me.
Is that better?
Okay, perfect. Okay, yeah, now go ahead and read your speech.
Okay, you can
Yeah.
all hear me. Okay, yeah. I refer to Milt as Milt because I didn't know he was Walt until this incident occurred. And what I have here is a remembrance of Milt as my cosmic brother. Okay. And when Josh called me a couple of weeks ago, or actually sent me a text about the terrible incident, he said he passed away, and I didn't know that
See your
Milt was sick.
grandfather's.
But in any case, I finally found out by calling Irene and calling Ellen that there was an accident, a traffic accident. Okay. And that was a little strange, but it just shocked me and saddened me because 2 weeks before the incident, I had spoken to him. Okay. He was up in Orlando and we were planning to get together again. Okay. We kept in touch for, let's see, I knew him for 14 years. I met him in 2011. Okay. When I reconnected with Josh, and he said, well, his father-in-law is up in Orlando, and he gave me his phone number. So I called him, and that was in September. In November, he drove down in a vehicle that should have never been on the road. I actually looked for the tires when he drove onto the driveway. It was unbelievable. It was totally unroadworthy. But in any case, I started to get a sense of this fellow who was rather tall, okay, and hirsute, okay, and spoke a little funny, but he knew everything about everything. I had a note here that he knew a lot of stuff about a lot of things, okay, and over the years, we kept in touch, and when he'd come down here, okay, we would meet, and then Ellen joined us, and between the two of them, life became so enriched that there wasn't enough hours in the day to spend together and talk about everything there was to talk about, okay? I found Milt to be a zany, an extraordinary human being. He was very wise. He was bright. He was a learned guy. Okay, there was nothing pretentious about him. You know, what you saw was this cosmic mind all over the place. Okay, and he had it wasn't opinions; it was just insight and established ideas about life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, where things came from, where things were going, things to come. It just went on and on. Okay, and any time that we spent with him and Ellen, it was just so enriching. Okay, his communications, basically his emails, were sprinkled with fakakta. Okay, that's a Yiddish word meaning all screwed up. With fakakta, English, Latin, Hebrew, and Yiddish. And actually, if you could see this is one of his emails. I have a wonderful file here with all his writings and his sideway ideas and things like that. If you can see this, okay. It was an author, a poet, E.E. Cummings, yeah, who violated all the syntax. This is the way he used to say it to me. Okay, yeah, really wonderful. And in fact, I tracked down the magical realism to truly understand all of this. Okay, but you know, after the incident, and I realized that his thoughts were flavored by this magic realism. Okay, which indeed may have been expressed in what happened in terms of the day that he was no longer here. It was very strange. I found a reference to that kind of an event. Okay. I deeply miss him. He became a friend. I just love the guy. Okay. And he was at my birthday party last year. Okay. And you can describe this and then I'll finish up. Well, I just have a little story because I didn't know Milt well, and I really wanted to know him better because I loved it when he and Ellen would come visit. I loved the intellectual conversation. But anyway, it was Alan's 90th birthday party, and I was at the same table with Milt, along with a lawyer, an artist, a videographer, and Milt comes in a little bedraggled kind of way. Everybody was kind of dressed up and sparkly, and he was shabby chic. And he raced into the food, and it was really good. And finally, I decided to do introductions around the table. So I introduced the lawyer and the videographer and the rocket scientist, and everybody's eyebrows went up. He's a rocket scientist? Yes. Well, the conversation was very good after that once we brought him into it. It was very lively. And that was my favorite memory of Milt.
Let me finish this up. Like I said, I love the guy. He was a buddy. We were close to the same age. We had a lot to talk about. We lived a lot of life, okay? And I miss him terribly, okay? Never again for him to pick up the phone when I call and to listen to that crazy voice pattern, okay? And to discuss how to fix an ungepatcht, which means disturbed cosmos, okay? We always talked about how we're going to fix this. And the best words we could use were the Yiddish words. They described exactly what we were talking about. So I say to him, my dear friend, R.I.P., and that won't be true of his new neighbors. Okay. So thanks for the opportunity to speak about this great guy whom I remember as Milt. And Ellen and the family, I have his notes here, what he sent to me, and there are just interesting little quips and pieces of sayings and thoughts and what have you. And when I go, before I go, okay, I will this to whomever wants it. So thanks for the opportunity to participate in this. He's a great guy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Alan. Irene or Josh, would you like to share something?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Next up is David. David from Australia. Go ahead.
Yes, Mike often attended our late Friday evening Zoom sessions. He generally didn't speak. He listened very carefully and then would make a very incisive comment occasionally. So I missed out on the depth of and range of his interests. Anyway, I concede the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Evelyn, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to make a little comment that I once had. I wouldn't say an argument because we never really argued, but with Mikey, that I wondered, I said, I know it's a more elegant title, magical realism, but what is the difference between that and joy? Just plain joy. And it really could create, and so forth. So I was using as an example, my granddaughter recently had a child, and she had at that time, and her husband and she were holding this little 4-month-old baby in the backyard, and they had gotten a new puppy, and they were introducing the puppy to their senior dog. And the two puppies went absolutely berserk, running around the yard and so forth. And all of a sudden, this 4-month-old just burst into hysterical laughing. And the chuckling and so forth, and watching this whole scene. And I had just said to my granddaughter, there's danger in our society now, and that's why you're worrying about a new child. but at the same time recognize that even the cave woman holding her baby had to worry about what was next. So don't worry too much about, because things will always change. And that occurred to me immediately as I'm thinking that about Mikey and saying, I wish you would experience this and you could experience this and tell me the difference between this absolute joy and magical realism, because to me, that was a magic moment. So, anyway, always intriguing.
Thank you. Thank you. Rami, would you like to share something?
Just that the greatest gift that I think Mike always gave each one of us was his attention.
Yes. I'll just say one quick thing about that. Um, you know, he actually spoke usually at the end of the meetup. He listened to everybody. He listened to everybody. And then when he spoke, you realize that he had actually kept track of the things that really stood out for him. And he kind of tried to tie them together in his comments. The way, one point that Joe made was about respect. When he spoke, he was very opinionated, for sure. But the way he spoke was with tremendous respect for everybody who was there. And he was making a point, not trying to bludgeon people with his opinion, but simply trying to present what he thought. So thank you. Thank you, Rami. Next up is Joe. And folks would love to hear from you. Go ahead.
Yeah. Now, one of the things actually David Miller said, and I thought about this actually prior to, the meetup, and Mike didn't speak a lot. But when he spoke, it was meaningful. And one of the things when I say Mike was foundational is because he knew when to speak. That is as important as anything else, because sometimes a conversation needs to go in a different direction. And so having that wisdom as kind of as to when to chime in. I'd never had been in a situation where it was something where it was out of turn, or it was not necessarily that it was taking us in the wrong direction. It may be, you might have to bring it in and kind of relate it back to the topic, but however, he chose his words carefully. And that is also part of that building of the community itself, because that's, again, how people then feel welcomed. He was also doing that through an element of respect, and as I'd said a little bit earlier, through wisdom. And that's the only way, because it's not, he didn't obviously just collect facts and have knowledge. He had wisdom, and that's what he shared with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Next up is Vanessa. Go ahead. Vanessa, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now? But my phone's acting up.
Go ahead.
Well, like I put in the comments, I always look forward to seeing if he was going to be coming to a discussion. But I remember there's a few things where he would say something in such a way, I wonder, was he trying to be funny or just the connections he made? It's like, I never thought that way. And it's like, okay. A few times you could tell because he would chuckle. But to his family, I'm sure he always won Trivial Pursuit, but I wondered if he ever played charades, who ended up winning. And the one thing that floored me is one time he said, either we can never know, he honestly said that something, maybe we'll find out one day. And just floored me to think, oh my gosh, he doesn't know the answer really has any input to it one way or the other. And that may take some humility, just simply saying, we can't know. or we don't have the information to form even really an opinion that, you know, really can draw anything, just like you flip a coin. So I think that was probably the most meaningful things. I think someone's going to say, we really can't know. And not that, well, because I don't know, you can't. Or even admitting if he took something a few times maybe he hadn't considered and would acknowledge that. And like I said, that few things like floored me like that. But I always enjoyed he was there because you never knew what, even if it was like 2 sentences, you know, it was going to be worth something hearing.
Thank you, Vanessa. Ellen, go ahead.
Well, a couple of thoughts to share. You know, Mikey was very comfortable with the knowledge that you can't know everything, and that the search for answers was almost more important than the answer itself. And that made the dialectical discussion with him so always intriguing and satisfying, because you didn't have to know. You didn't have to figure everything out. You just had to figure out how to try to figure it out. And I think that's important. The other thing I would say is that he saw the magic in every single thing. You know, we put up on the invitation Blake's poem, you know, about holding the world in a grain of sand and all of that, and infinity in the palm of one's hand. I think he saw in every drop of every instance of anything, the larger view. He saw the implications of everything. He connected everything with the higher truth. That everything had that, not only the magical, and that sense of joy and humor was all part of it. It's so complicated to try to describe him, because he had this capacious intellect, but also this enormous perspective that you couldn't fully ever grasp. But you were always learning. If you assumed, if you allowed for his well, you know, his inconsistencies and his fallibilities and all that, it was just amazing all the time, just how brilliant he was and how capacious was his intellect and his perspective. So again, I can go on, but I'm hoping to stimulate some others.
Wonderful. Thank you. Folks, if you have not spoken before, please, you know, you're welcome to share. You don't need to, but you're always welcome to share. Next up is Katie. Katie, go ahead.
I liked how Vanessa commented on the connections he made, because I was always impressed by the number of ideas that he could tie together and comment on in the group while offering validation to everybody. He was very positive towards the people, and he had great impulse control. And as the evening goes on, I'll start remembering more things.
Yes, and folks, you don't have to talk at length. If you just remember one thing, you can go ahead and just talk about that, because this is, again, you know, this is like, there are so many strands here of him, and you know, we don't have each of us has different strands, so it is really wonderful to kind of share. Steve.
Well, Barbara hadn't spoken, so we might want to let her go before me. So I yield to
Barbara, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. You know, I was really surprised to see this, and I don't know why, because, you know, this kind of event intervenes in everyone's life. But it just seemed to me, oh my God, not that guy. No, it couldn't be. And I remember like seeing him on Zoom, you know, from the very beginning when lockdown was happening. And he was a little, I don't know what the word is, but I was confused by his presentation at first. But then I got to know him and understood where he was coming from. And it took a really long time for me to sort of grok what he was about, to the little tiny extent I could. But I really was touched when he called me by my name one time. So, you know, that's really all. But it just seems like when things go hard, you know, you don't expect it. You don't expect that suddenness. I mean, you expect maybe to to have to push, to have to work, to have to overcome troubles. But when it's just a snap of a finger, it's really, really hard to figure out.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Barbara. Steve.
Yeah, so I have a kind of a funny story about Mike involving his name. It has a little bit of a twist in the end, though, so be ready for this. I always knew Mike by Mike or Mikey. The reason for that was when he signed in to join the group. This is when we went to meet up and he joined the group. He signed in as Mike. I didn't realize until listening to all of you how widespread he was. He was a member of so many different groups. And as brilliant as he was, he would forget his password to get in. And so he would then go back and re-enter, and he would add another E to his name. So it became Mike E. And after a while, he forgot that password. And then it became Mike E, triple E. I think it actually got up to 4 E's at one time, as a matter of fact. So, and it didn't matter. I mean, I always welcomed him back into Plato's Cave. But I only found out now after his death that there were some issues with his background as a Jew. And that's really sad. We are unfortunately, and I agree with Evelyn and others that may have said this, is we are in a highly polarizing world, actually, and particularly the United States, which is a tragedy. But apparently I didn't know that Milton was his real name. And Mike was a name that he used to sort of hide that fact. So maybe other people would like to talk about that. And the other story, I mentioned the fact that he always dressed rather humbly. And it's only recently I found out, I knew that he had been in the military and he always talked about his sort of failed military career. It's kind of hard for me to imagine Mike in a Air Force uniform. However, knowing that he was an intelligence service doesn't surprise me. And it doesn't surprise me that he had a degree in engineering, because he did have, I would call a neurodivergent mind, but it was a brilliant mind. And sometimes I would ask him, Mike, where are you living now? Where are you? And he'd say, oh, I'm up in DC. I thought, what are you doing there? And it finally connected. He is somehow advising some government organization. So I joked with him about being one of the men in black. And I now find out that he actually was involved. I guess he kept getting called back because he had special knowledge and special abilities that were hard to find, and apparently was involved in some sort of well, I don't. Maybe I should let Ellen, because I'm not sure I can reveal this. But at any rate, it was intelligence was his field, and obviously he was very good at it. And they called him back, obviously, for his expertise. So hopefully that adds a little bit to the story. Maybe somebody else can fill in about the name. And I yield the balance of my time.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. So, anybody else would like to share, especially if you have not shared before, even if it's very short, you're welcome. Irene, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just say that, that just reminds me, when we were growing up, we always used to say that our dad worked with computers, but we didn't really know what he did because he had worked in intelligence, but he always had books. He loved books. He was an avid collector of books and an avid collector of lots of information. And I'm not surprised that he dove into these groups to share his knowledge and learn from you all. Yeah. So I'll yield my time.
Thank you. Thank you, Irene. Let's see here. So Anybody? I think Evanique, would you like to share anything? Any impressions?
Sure. So I really didn't know Mike that well other than through Meetup. I think one of the things that always impressed me about Mike um, is that if you didn't understand something, you could ask him and he would explain it to you. And I think, you know, like Joe said earlier, you know, sometimes it took a while for you to get him back to the topic, but he would get there eventually. And I always said, like, Mike was way more intelligent than me because, like, most of the time I was just lost at what he said, but he would still break it down until you understood. So I thought that was just kind. And one of the things is that he was very intelligent, but he never held it like in high esteem. He just kind of that's who he was. And you know, he understood and he was so good towards like as he was involved in meetup even more, he could he worked on getting his comments to be more concise. He knew that was something he needed to work on and he did. And I think that's a skill that or that's a quality that a lot of people don't really exercise. It's like they say they're doing it and then they don't. But Mike really did it. Like he really would work on being more concise. He would work on paring it down. And so I always admired that about him.
Thank you. Thank you, Evanique. Laura, did you want to share something? Let's see, where is Laura? Okay. And Ellie, if you decide you want to speak, you can help somebody. You can get somebody's help in order to unmute. And I will, you know, and whenever you're unmuted, you can just start speaking, you know, no matter even if somebody else is speaking. I know it is tough where you are to unmute and to speak, but if you want to speak, you're always welcome to do that. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Where's Laura? Okay. Okay. All right. So we are coming up on about 1 hour, 15 minutes. So what I want to do is I want to ask people. Ellen, go ahead.
Just to comment on Steve's question and Irene's response, you know, I often thought that Mikey would have been the perfect spy. In all the years I spent with him, I never knew exactly what he was doing, but I did know that he was extremely adroit when it came to symbol systems and language and mathematics and algorithms. And I never knew for sure, but I had a feeling that he designed and deciphered code. You know, he was the code man, and he was just so he was brilliant at even Talmudic analysis, any kind of analysis of the nuances of poetry, language. He was a champion at it, and I never felt that he was part of too many Zoom conversations about literary symbolism. That wasn't, you know, but he could have been. He could have been. He just had that kind of capacious mind, and I can't imagine that he wouldn't have been called up to decipher and to analyze complex issues because no one could do it the way he could. So, but he never told me what he was doing, not exactly anyway. So I can't, I'm not, Steve, I can't answer your question. You know, I can only talk around it. So thank you.
Right. So we've got about 15 minutes. So I want to raise a question to everybody again, in the honor of Mikey. You know, he was all about learning. It really did not. He didn't come to display his knowledge. He came to learn. That's why he was in all those places. That's why he was listening most of the times before he spoke towards the end of the meetup. And then even when he spoke, I'm trying to capture in my mind the tone of how he spoke and what it meant about what he thought of the other mind of their listening. He put it in a very simple way, in a very humble way. He says, look, I'm just laying out what I have heard, what I think about whatever I have heard for the last 1.5 hours. This is what I think. And he would very, very kind of, not in a, not saying that I know these things, but simply, oh, here are the patterns. Here are the interesting patterns that I see that you guys have produced. Okay. So in the honor of that, I want to ask people, what did you learn about Mikey today? Because this is actually a very special thing if you think of it. Most of us as a group have not interacted much. All we have in common is Mikey, right? And each of us, we've already established his multifaceted nature. So if you would like to share very briefly, less than a minute, what did you learn today? Steve.
One of the things that's been on my mind is that our last Plato's Cave meeting, I had brought up the subject of enchantment. What is enchantment? Mike was enchanted himself, and he was enchanted about learning, as you so properly revealed, and enchantment about wisdom, as Joe has revealed. So he was all about discovery, all about learning, trying to dig deeper into the deepest truth that he could find, philosophical, technical, all of it. And it thrilled him. That is what he lived for, I think. And I really admire him for that. Admire him in his search so widely, going out to so many different groups, even if he forgot his password. It bothered me. I'm so glad that his enchantment became mine as he spoke. So yes, he was a wonderful guy. And like I said, I will miss him.
Thank you, all of us. Joe, followed by Vanessa.
Yeah, really quickly, outside of his interest in UFOs, that was definitely new for me as well. But I will say that, the one thing that I've learned, and I know that Ellen had mentioned this in previous conversations, is that, the interest in Maimonides, but also how everybody's spoken and what Steve was just saying, the idea of myth itself and having, this analytical mind, then in this interest in myth. And what that is that's so important in the sense that he looked at different belief systems. But when you do that, you look at the text as a living text. And that's a continuous learning. There's a continuous transmission, as opposed to it having this fixed text, as if it's frozen in time. And none, that having that skill is actually what made Mike Mike.
Wonderful. Thank you, Joe. Next up is Vanessa.
Okay, I can now understand how extensive, both with his professional background and the variety of work he did, but also both with the analytical and the expensive. Sometimes he could speak so succinctly, but speak volumes. There's sometimes like he could, and also just knowing a little bit about him, you could appreciate, okay, where he was coming from and what he had said in the past and how he might speak. And sometimes just saying those 2 sentences, you realize, okay, he put a lot of thought into it to say it that succinctly, because sometimes just 3 sentences can be more than reading 3 paragraphs.
Wonderful. Thank you, Vanessa.
Great appreciation for it.
Thank you. I'll make a quick comment, and then anybody else wants to share, what is it that you learned today? Wait a minute. Marissa, go ahead.
Okay. I learned today that I didn't know Mike well enough. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, hearing all of you makes me kind of hunger to have known him a little bit more broadly. So thank you for that. I got to experience facets of him that I was very unfamiliar with.
Yeah, it's like I'm kind of connecting with him as being involved in intelligence. And in some ways, I'm kind of playing back in my mind all the things, in all those 500 meetups that he has said. Okay. And I'm seeing new patterns in that. Okay. One of the big patterns that I see is that he had a he had the ability of connecting or having in him things which are not usually found together. He was superb, supreme at analytical thinking. Okay, off the charts, off the charts. And he could just go in that direction, you know, miles and miles very, very quickly. So it was very obvious that he was very good at that. But at the same time, what I'm learning is that, he participated in many, many, many of the religious meetups that we did on Tao Te Ching, on Bhagavad Gita, on the Bible. And he had a very deep spiritual side to him. These two things usually don't coexist quite like that. So that is, I'm just kind of I'm in, I'm filled with wonder about that. Ellen.
Well, one of the reasons that we enjoyed so much reading Maimonides together was precisely that he was Maimonides was all about applying scientific understanding to matters religious and spiritual, and at that the conflation of the two really inspired Mikey's thinking, because I think that's where his head is. Can I just say one thing as we come toward closure, and that is this: in my mind, I keep writing about Mikey, and I do intend to put something up on legacy.com, but because of my experience, 20 years of running universities and colleges, that we always find ways to memorialize someone. And I'm not thinking about a great endowment, financial endowment, but I'm wondering how, in the Zoom world, there might be a way to honor Mikey's memory and set up something, whether it's a memorial lecture. I don't know what, because I'm not really, in the Zoom world the way he was, but it's just something to think about how, or maybe once a year in certain groups, one thinks about his capacious, I don't know. I'm just putting it out there. But meanwhile, send me anything that you want in terms of putting it up on legacy.com, where, by the way, in case you want to see what he looked like, there's a picture, there's a photo. So, okay, thank you.
Well, could somebody put the link for Mike's legacy?
Rami already did.
Rami already did. Perfect. Perfect. Okay. Second, if you would like to submit anything in writing, about your impressions, you can either put it directly on legacy.com, or you can message me in Meetup, or you can email Ellen. Okay, you can do any of these three things, whatever is convenient to you. So, because it would be wonderful to capture these things in writing as well. And I'm going to give the last word. Oh, wait a minute. Wait. Jeannie, go ahead. Jeannie, you're still on mute. Jeannie, we can't hear you. Okay. Let's try. Can you say something, Jeannie? Okay. That's fine. Sorry about that, Jeannie. There's some audio problem apparently. Okay, so I'm going to give the closing words to family and Ellen. Who, if you would like to say any kind of closing things here, you're welcome to do that.
I think we all appreciate being invited to this. Thank you so much for including us, and for me, and I don't know about everyone else in my family, but it was just really nice to see how this side of my father that we didn't know, that I mean, I knew that he liked these groups, and he before, I guess before groups, he used to go to meetings. But now he was able to go to these groups, and he was probably able to indulge more in these intellectual activities. So this was probably really, really wonderful for him, especially as he got older and it was harder for him to get around. Yeah. So yeah, thank you all for being there and stimulating his mind, and I'm really touched that to see how much you loved him. Thank you.
Yes, we're very grateful. We're very grateful. Thank you. And we will be putting this video up as well. And I will send a link to Ellen. So if you want to share with the rest of the friends and family, you'll be able to do so.
Definitely.
Ellen, I'm
Just
going to
thank
give
you
you the
for
last word.
Shrikant, thank you for everything you've done. You bring, in the spirit of Mikey pulling together, you have succeeded in linking his family with this series of conversational groups, face to face and virtual. And so I feel that power of connection very deeply. So thank you.
Thank you, Ellen, for reaching out. And we're all going to miss Mikey. And it was just, he was a core part of what he did. And what happens is that he lives on. I can even hear his voice.
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
not going to forget his voice. And so and the each person, they show us possibilities of being that we did not discover in ourselves, and they open possibilities of our own being, thanks to their example. And Mikey definitely was, one of those people. So thank you very much, everybody, for coming and sharing.
Sure, Kant, I'd like to say that
Please.
I think that Mikey would improve of the beautiful way you handled this. So thank you.
Thank you, Evelyn. Really appreciate that. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.